Hello, I'm author and publisher Mark David Welsh, and welcome to Cult Book Review, the show where I review a selection of wild and eclectic volumes from the history of literature. And this week I'll be taking on two books by the famous actor Vincent Price. The first one, I Like What I Know. The second one, The Book of Joe. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you enjoy the video. I Like What I Know by Vincent Price is subtitled A Visual Autobiography and was first published in 1959. Now, the idea of an autobiography by one of my favourite film actors and a true horror icon was really appealing to me. But I already knew going in that this was not a book about his exploits on the silver screen. That's very clear from the blurb on the back, which I'm going to quote for you. It says it's the story of his life through his 48th year as seen through the lens of his greatest passion, the visual arts. Although it does also say that it's peppered with lively stories about both his art collecting, his advocacy and his career as an actor. So I knew going in this was not going to be your usual actor's reminiscences. And it's not. Now, the book begins with stories of his life growing up, and I was immediately struck by his fine vocabulary and wit, although I was a little unsure about his style at first. But either it settled down or I adapted to it pretty quickly because I soon began to enjoy this reading experience. And there are some fine anecdotes in the early chapters, such as the staggering fact that a 12-year-old boy from St. Louis could save his pocket money and wages from odd jobs and buy a Rembrandt. Yes, it was only a minor etching and cost $40, but even so, I couldn't help wondering how much that etching is worth today. Just as amazing to me is the fact that a young American man and aspiring actor in London could land a lead in a West End production opposite legendary theatre actress Helen Hayes after only a few weeks' stage experience. The role ended up taking Price to Broadway, and the rest is history, of course, and I enjoyed these passages immensely. But I have to confess I've always had a somewhat distant relationship to art. It may be stronger than my relationships with ballet and opera, for example, which are almost non-existent, but it's still a much weaker connection than my relationship with literature, music and film. Now, Price talks a lot in the first half of the book about learning to see when you interact with the visual arts, such as painting and sculpture. And hands up, that's a lesson I've never learned. And as the book goes on, it increasingly becomes a long catalogue of artists and works that Price admired and loved. Now, don't get me wrong, he's an engaging host and obviously one of the most erudite and interesting conversationalists you could ever hope to meet. But without the visual representations of what he's talking about, it becomes a bit of a slog. Yeah, there are some pictures in the back of the book, but as Price himself points out, you really have to see these works in situ with the light as the artist intended. However, he does make some interesting, funny and illuminating observations on the mania of collecting as a whole, not just in relation to art. However, if you're wanting a volume about Price and his films, I would direct you to this one, Lucy Chase Williams' The Films of Vincent Price. She was a personal friend of the great man, and the book is definitive. One last thing. The book does contain a wonderful quote which I have never heard before about travel from the painter Eugene Delacroix, and I'm going to share it with you here. The quicker you get where you're going, the longer you have to be bored when you get there, which I thought was lovely. Now, the other one of Price's publications I have here to talk about is a far slimmer volume, The Book of Joe, about a dog and his man. Now, this is mostly a tongue-in-cheek title. It pretty much is a brief and affectionate memoir about his relationship with his favourite mongrel Joe, who he delights in calling a mutt. Now, it's obvious Price was pretty far gone over Joe. You can even sense the love he feels for the animal when describing the dog's many shortcomings. It's fact, that's when you feel it the most. I couldn't help feeling a little sorry for Price's wife. at the time, as I guess she was permanently outnumbered by the dog and his man, and it's pretty much impossible to imagine Price taking Joe seriously to task for anything that he did, however misguided it might have been. Now, it doesn't provide any great insights into Price's character because it just confirms everything we already knew about the man. Behind the mask of horror, the man was a total sweetheart and a complete softie. So I enjoyed that one possibly more than the book about art, but having said that, they're both worth reading if you're fans of the man. Just be a little bit careful about taking on the former one because there's an awful lot in it about art. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.